So many people, they see the recyclable label and they put it in the recycle bin.
Jan Dell is a former chemical engineer who has spent years telling an inconvenient truth. For those of us who are constantly putting our plastic into the blue recycling bin and assuming it's going to the recycling place, what do we not know?
You're being lied to. The vast majority of plastics are not recycled. They're just not.
About 48 million tons of plastic waste is generated in the U.S. each year. Only 5 to 6% of it is actually recycled. The rest ends up in landfills or is burned.
All these plastic pouches that you get in e-commerce.
Dell founded a nonprofit to fight plastic pollution. Inside her garage in Southern California are all sorts of plastic with those little arrows on it that make us think they can be recycled.
It means you're being fooled.
Those so-called chasing arrows started showing up on plastic products in 1988, part of a push to convince the public that plastic waste wasn't a problem because it can be recycled.
They didn't really need it to work, right? They needed people to believe that it was working.
Davis Allen is an investigative researcher with the Center for Climate Integrity. In a new report called The Fraud of Plastic Recycling, it accuses the plastics industry of a decades-long campaign to mislead the public about the viability of plastic recycling, despite knowing the technical and economic limitations that make plastics unrecyclable at a large scale.
They couldn't ever lie about the existence of plastic waste, but they created a lie about how we could solve it, and that was recycling.
So if plastic recycling is technically difficult, if it doesn't make a whole lot of economic sense, why has the plastics industry pushed it?
The plastics industry understands that selling recycling sells plastic, and they'll say pretty much whatever they need to say to continue doing that. That's how they make money.
Plastic is made from oil and gas and comes in thousands of varieties, most of which cannot be recycled together.
The possibilities of plastics.
But in the 1980s, when some municipalities moved to ban plastic products, the industry began promoting the idea of recycling as a solution.
What we see in here is a widespread knowledge that plastics recycling was not working.
Allen showed us documents and meeting notes they obtained from public archives and from a former staff member of the American Plastics Council. At a trade conference in Florida in 1989, an industry leader told attendees, recycling cannot go on indefinitely and does not solve the solid waste problem. In 1994, an Exxon executive told the staff of the Plastics Council that when it comes to recycling, we are committed to the activities, but not committed to the results.
They always kind of viewed recycling not as a real technical problem that they needed to solve, but as a public relations problem.
The industry just launched a new ad campaign called Recycling is Real.
Recycling is very real.
And says it's investing in what it calls advanced recycling technology. An industry trade group responded to Sunday Morning in a statement calling the Center for Climate Integrity's report flawed and outdated, and says plastic makers are working hard to change the way that plastics are made and recycled.
It's the same process they were trying it 30 years ago. And my response to that is it's science fiction.
Jan Dell doesn't believe plastic will ever be truly recyclable. Plastic production is set to triple by 2050, and with so much plastic waste piling up on land and sea, more than 170 countries are working on a United Nations treaty to end plastic pollution. In a letter to President Biden about the negotiations, the plastics industry says it opposes any bans on plastic production, but supports more recycling.
The only thing the plastics industry has actually recycled is their lies over and over again.